Tom Savage of Three Red Kings. Tom, obviously counting down the minutes to kick off tonight, Munster versus Cardiff. Always seems to be a lively game between these two sides, and usually we see plenty of tries and high scoring matches. You'd be hoping for the same again tonight, but it's a Munster side, Tom, that, like we said, can we say every night in the pod now, that just seem to be kind of tipping along towards that final showdown that they will more than likely have with Leinster at the end of the season. But there's been, I think last week was really impressive away against Edinburgh, the way they ground that game out when they had to, a Munster team that are slowly building.
Oh yeah, look, that Edinburgh side last week, this kind of game gets kind of written off as being just another test window game, but like that was a pretty strong Edinburgh pack they had there. Jack van der Walt was back at halfback. Pergos was there. You had Nick Haining, Bill Mata, super player. A lot of fellas involved at international level. Pierre Schumann. I think that was a pretty high quality win for Munster last week. And building into this week now against Cardiff, as you said there, look, they've had pretty tasty games, these two teams. You look at the last time that Munster played in Cardiff, they had a fantastic win. But if we just go back even earlier in this season, Cardiff were under different management then, yes, but that game was actually really tight. Coming into the last 10 or 15 minutes, the game was still kind of up in the air. A fantastic try by JJ Hanrahan, a team try really, but finished off by JJ was the kind of a late highlight. But Cardiff will take a bit of beating in this game. They have been playing quite well. They've got a system that suits them. Dai Young is a very good coach. He's back coaching there now. I think that Cardiff are a very underrated team in this conference, and they're going to put up a pretty hefty fight later on tonight, I would say.
The team selection for Munster as well, Tom. It's obviously there's a lot of the internationals gone, but we've seen that depth in Munster over the past few weeks, and it's not just over the past few weeks, over the past few months, and you do really get the impression that this is a season where you would, we've always kind of went with the hopes of beating Leinster, but we're at the point where hopes are nearly coming to expectations with the curve of this current crop.
Yeah, look, I think that they're playing really well. You've guys like Gavin Coombs who, have an argument that they could be starting for Ireland tomorrow, I think he's played extraordinarily well. You've guys like Jack O'Donoghue, who seems to have really fitted in now to a role that really suits him in this squad. His skill set is really being utilised. You've younger guys like Finian Wycherley. You've guys like Ben Healy. He's not involved tonight, but I think you look at how Munster have been developing over this season. Ben Healy's got a lot of time for a guy who's in year 3 of the academy. With Tom Ahern is a guy who they'll want to bring through. You have a feeling that he may have been involved this weekend had he not been injured. There's lots of young fellas here who are putting their hands up, and guys like Roman Salanoa, who we're all excited to see again tonight. There's a real potential here for this Munster side to kind of really, really kick on now. Beating Leinster in a final, should Munster get there, and should Leinster get there, to be fair, will be a very difficult thing for this Munster side. We have not done that in quite some time. Whether that can happen in a final has to be proven, but you would look at that guy there wearing the number 22 jersey tonight. We hope, Joey Carbery, he will be a key part in what Munster do for the rest of this season, one way or the other, I would think.
Yeah, and look, mentioning that number 22, it's great to see Joey Carbery back in a matchday squad for Munster. And if you kind of sit back for a second and you say, okay, if we get a fit Joey Carbery, Ben Healy, JJ Hanrahan, you've got a lot of competition for a 10 spot with 3 guys like that. And some competition will help to raise the standards of all going for that position.
Yeah, and look, as Johan van Ron himself has said, that there's positional versatility with these guys too. A guy like Jack Crowley, a guy like Jake Flannery. Jake Flannery, for example, is playing in an A game tomorrow at fullback. I think that position really suits him. And ultimately, who knows where Joey Carbery will end up when he's back in the mix as well. He's been out for 18 months. Delighted to see this guy back from a game plan and a performance perspective. Look, he's going to get back into the groove at a schedule that will suit himself, and rightly so. But I'm just delighted for him to get back because, he wants to, he's a pro rugby player. He's been injured for 18 months. You want a guy like that to get his game and to just see what he's, to see what he's about to get back out there again. But whether he'll end up at 10 or 15, That's an active question mark now. I think from a Munster perspective, seeing a guy who's played 4 games for Munster since January 2019, like you can't really look at him and go, look, we're guaranteed that this guy is going to be like a guy starting regularly for Munster at 10 in a year, in 2 years. You just can't say that. I mean, you can't really say that with any player, really. But when a guy's been out for as long as that, you have to be patient. But you also have to build for the future. So I think Munster, especially with the way that the young players they've got coming through, we're going to see Munster, I think, and I think Ireland as well, not necessarily be relying on the one playmaker. I think that's something that leaves you a little bit vulnerable, because what happens when that guy gets injured? You're kind of in a situation then where, there's massive shifts have to be made.
Have we fallen into that trap with Johnny Sexton, Tom? And that you can criticize the succession planning, but has there been an over reliance on him too, almost like a kind of never really acknowledging or looking at the fact that this guy isn't going to be around at some stage?
He is the Ireland attack at the moment. Everything would go through Sexton. I mean, and I think he's earned that spot. I mean, when he came in as the main guy was just around the point when Declan Kidney had moved on, or being moved on rather, from the Irish Test job. Joe Schmidt came in from Leinster. Johnny Sexton was his guy there. He was his guy at Ireland. He was Joe Schmidt on the pitch. So that level of importance that came with Sexton and Schmidt, that has preserved. Johnny Sexton's a very, very good player. I mean, a lot of the conversations that we've seen around him lately has just been sort of a kind of a, are you still here kind of thing. I think a large part, because people are kind of, blame is tending to fall about Ireland's attack. Is it Mike Catt's fault? Is it Joey Carbery or Johnny Sexton's fault? These are the things that kind of that are being thrown around, and people are looking for who's the next guy. I think that Johnny Sexton is still playing very well, and of the guys who are fit right now, I think he's the best player. Ireland are looking to try and get the most out of Johnny Sexton in his last year-ish. I mean, look, he doesn't know how long he's going to keep playing. At 35, 36, sometimes the body just goes, we're done, and that's just it, and it can happen from 1 week to another. So, I think that Ireland are right to use Johnny Sexton as is. Joey Carbery becoming, getting back to full fitness would solve a lot of issues for Ireland and for Munster, but for Ireland in particular. So we'll have to see how that develops over the course of the next few weeks and months. I don't think we'll be seeing Joey Carbery playing in the Six Nations, for example, but it's kind of where we're at now is I think Ireland are very, very reliant on Johnny Sexton, and the need for a proper second playmaker is something I think is becoming quite urgent at test level, because I think any past questions that guy might be Gary Ringrose, I'm not sure that stacks up against the very best opposition. Look, it might be the case tomorrow against Italy where, we see Gary Ringrose playmaking a little bit, but I think the expectations of Ireland versus Italy are quite different than the realities of playing Ireland versus France or Ireland versus England, which is still coming up later in this tournament and will be a massive reckoning game for this group.
Yeah, I put it to you, they'll probably have two massive reckoning games in the England and the Scottish game. I mean, I don't think anyone is. It's a kind of a strange one going into this Italian game tomorrow, in that we're expecting to win, but we're very guarded, I think, about how this team is going to perform, and I just think there's a distinct lack of confidence around the team, the squad, and even if you look at the selection, an entire Leinster back line, if this guy goes out and loses with this team, I would put it to you, there's huge pressure on. Whereas, if he goes out with a team of younger players, of guys with less caps, that you're saying, okay, I think he might have bought himself a bit more forgiveness or a bit more leeway in that sense.
Yeah, Andy Farrell is, when he loses those first two games, when Ireland lose those first two games, that puts Andy Farrell under a lot of pressure. And it's not the kind of pressure that will see him lose his job if Ireland finish third or fourth even in this year's Six Nations. But it's pressure nonetheless. You want to get wins. A lot of losses in a row. Players start to think, look, is this, what's up? What's happening with this guy? Are we going forward? Are we improving? Or are we just talking about improving? You look at Ireland this weekend against Italy, it is a bit of a no-win situation. Because if Ireland win, they've beaten Italy. If Ireland lose, they've lost to Italy, and there's lots of ramifications that are kind of unpredictable that come with that. Like, is it out of the question that Ireland will lose this game to Italy on Saturday afternoon? No, it is not out of the question. It absolutely could happen. If it does, then Ireland are in kind of uncharted territory, really. You're going away to Murrayfield to play Scotland then. That's an incredibly difficult game. You're looking at the England game at home then. You could be looking at Ireland losing all 5 games in the Six Nations, which would be the first time that's happened in God knows how long. So there's pressure on this game tomorrow. And you look at the team that Andy Farrell has selected, there's Ryan Baird and Craig Casey on the bench. But for the most part, this is first choice units in the front row, in the second row. Guys who are first choice in that back 5 in Tyke Byrne, CJ Stander. Will Connors has started a lot for Ireland recently too. That's a pretty much first choice backline, you would say. There's no real experimentation there. Yes, there's young lads on the bench in Casey and Baird, but this is Ireland looking to go out there and win first and foremost, which is always the aim. But they're not thinking about development with this game. They're thinking about getting wins. They're thinking about building cohesion for that Murrayfield game, and it's about finishing the Six Nations campaign strongly, because if the losses continue to build up, no coach can endure loss after loss after loss after loss without, at some point, something having to happen.
Yeah, it really is an invidious task for Andy Farrell in that situation. It's a kind of look. I think we mentioned off air. It's an uninspiring selection, Tom, isn't it? It doesn't. You're not. I don't suppose you're ever really dying to watch the Italian match, in the sense that unless you need a massive points haul to win the championship on the last day. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, it tends to be one of the Six Nations fixtures that you wouldn't mind missing. But I don't know. Like I said, an uninspiring team selection, and not one that would be having you clamouring to get the remote to switch to Ireland Italy tomorrow.
Yeah, look, if Ireland win this game tomorrow afternoon, nobody will remember it in a year. If Ireland lose this game, it will be one that people will long remember. So there's a bit of pressure associated with that too. The team is relatively uninspiring. Again, it's related to what's happened already in this tournament. Ireland have lost 2 games, lost to Wales, lost to France. That put a lot of pressure on this game as a result. So any wider use of the squad, guys like Stuart McCluskey, Ultan Delan, Dave Heffernan, those guys getting starts, that was wiped out the window fairly early last 2 weeks ago when they were speaking about this game in advance. So Ireland have gone very strong because that's what they need to do. They must win this game. And it's not like losing to Italy was always optional before, but when it had been going well in the Six Nations, you kind of go, yes, we will use the wider squad. We're not under pressure here, but Ireland are under pressure in this game. They want to win every game, obviously, but this is one of those games where they really just cannot afford to have a negative performance, or even a tight, ugly win over Italy just won't do. I mean, Ireland have had a bit of trouble putting Italy away at times over the last few years, where it's taken until the 65th, maybe longer minute, to put a bit of separation there. Everybody's talking about how Italy are rubbish and any version of Ireland you could put out would beat Italy, which is not true. But you look at the way that Italy have been playing, they've been losing a lot of games, and people speak about improvement, but that improvement they're doing is just not enough relative to their opposition. But you look at some of their attacking metrics. Remember, they've played against England and Italy, or England and France, 2 incredibly difficult games. They've actually outperformed Ireland in some attacking metrics against those teams than what we have against Wales and France. So again, I would look at Italy and go, yeah, look, they've been losing a whole ton of games, but relatively speaking, they seem a little bit more comfortable ball in hand than what we have at times, given that they have produced some nice scores, some fluid attacking motion. We have as well at times, but it's just lacking that final product. Right now, I think Ireland offensively needs something to happen. This is the game that it can happen in. And whether it'll be enough to kick on Ireland for Scotland or England, that remains to be seen. But for today, or for this game tomorrow, this is a very difficult place for Ireland to be. They're under pressure in a way that they probably haven't been in this fixture before. And, pressure, expectation, that can do things to teams. And it's one of those things like where Ireland will most likely win this game and win it relatively well by the time it's finished. But I've just got this little itch in my head telling me that this has the potential to be a bit of a banana peel for Ireland if they aren't careful. And they'll need to play much better than what they have against Wales or France to make this happen.
Yeah, speaking of France, their game with Scotland, it was on, it was off, it was... Finally, they made the decision yesterday, I think, when another French player tested positive to postpone the game. And I suppose, really, Tom, the only sensible outcome, really, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, look, there was a fair bit of noise about this, but look, we're in the middle of a pandemic. The outbreak that happened in the French squad, look, it was such that when they said it was going ahead earlier in the week, it's just like, really? I mean, it was only going to take one more positive test. That happened, and the best thing to do is cut it off. When will it be replayed? Absolutely no idea. They're talking about during the warm-up game for the Lions. Like, I don't know. Like, it could be one of those ones where they may just be better off awarding it to somebody, you know. But
whoever needs it most.
Whoever needs it most. Yeah, look, it's unfortunate that it can't go ahead, but you know, public health, public safety has to come first with this stuff. And when they ever replay it, we might not get an end to this year's Six Nations for a number of months, you know. But I think we're just happy to be dealing with the regular pressure of who's going to win this game rather than who's sick with coronavirus. You know, I think it's a blessing one way or the other, but I think it's a sensible thing to call it off. And whether it plays or not, we don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Of course, there is the small matter of Wales and England, two teams that pretty much don't like each other, Tom, but... how do you fancy this one to pan out? We'll get you to get the other predictions afterwards, but we'll start with this one.
I have a feeling that England are going to run right over Wales in this game. I think England have started off very scratchy, very bitty. They haven't had a lot of time together. A lot of their core guys haven't played a whole lot of rugby, but I think with every game that they put down, they're going to get better. And I think that this game against Wales is at a good time for England and not necessarily a good time for Wales. Wales have improved to a certain extent. They've got a kind of a tough, I think, base character in their team that can get them over the line in scruffy situations like against Ireland and like against Scotland. But I think England, once they get rolling, are just a bad matchup for this Wales side right now. So I'm expecting that England will win this game quite comfortably. But you know, again, anything can happen in this tournament. But I just got that feeling that England at the moment are kind of just rolling back in. They've been hurt by injuries, and that's kind of hurt their blend in their back row, and it's kind of had Billy Vunipola kind of not necessarily playing the best role for him. But I think with the quality they have, the size they have, and just more time on the pitch and together, I think they'll be in a very good place coming up against Wales this weekend. Wales at home, you can never really write them off at all. But I'd back England for this one. I think that they're really starting to roll and get into shape now.
All right, Ireland, Italy, Tom. Yeah, you don't really have to be too brave on this one, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, I think Ireland are going to win. I think that the manner of the victory will be hugely important. I think that Italy have the ability to score tries against this Irish side. They have a shape and a structure that I think that in some ways is a bit of a bad matchup for us. But when you look at Ireland, I think our scrum, if our line-out continues to improve, I think we should have too many weapons for them. I think our maul, our breaks off the maul would be hugely important. I think we can score tries off the set piece against these guys in particular. So I'm going to go with Ireland with a 15, 20-point win. But I just have a feeling that it could get ugly in parts.
Munster and Cardiff, Tom, which is kicking off in about 20 minutes.
That one is, I think, has the potential to be quite high scoring. I think Munster should have enough off the bench to just get over the line against this Cardiff side. They've got some inexperience at halfback. That might be an issue for them. But I think Cardiff as well can score tries off the line-out. They can score tries off the scrum break, anything. So again, I think this is going to be a relatively high scoring game. I think Munster are going to come out just on top.
Okay, Tom, obviously it's too late for any of the Munster-oriented content right now, but you will obviously have the Wally ratings after the game tonight. But the Irish game tomorrow, what is on the Patreon page that can help people to get prepared for Ireland-Italy?
I have some the red eye. For the Munster game that's coming up might be a bit too soon to read it now, but I look at the green eye as well, basically looking at what Italy like to try and do with ball in hand, how that stacks up against Ireland. That's all